A tēnā tātou katoa, taki tū e tū tātou.
Let's go to Dr. Smith here at this point.
Mōkore anō kia tuku whakamoemuti nō reira kia ino e tātou. E te ariki a te atuoka harawa, ko koe te ihi, te wehi, te tapu. Ko koe te mātāpu no ngā mea tapu katoa nei ra mātou punonga noho mai nei tau waruaro. Ki tātarahi o kia koe he whakamoemuti, he whakawhetai kia koe mauna kere te katoa kua tākua hati e koe kia mātou. Nā ko nāno manakitia mai mātou I tēnei wā, manakitia mai o mātou whānau, e rā e māwiwi ana, e rawa kore ana, e pani ana. Uhia mai te tō mai rangi ata whai, kei runga ki tēnā mātou hei āwhina, hei tohu ia mātou tūturi whakamaua kia tēnā. Hau mie hui e, tāki e, tēnā koutou katoa e noho ki raro. A ti hei Māori ora. Nā ko nāno e te ti, e te tā e tātou māko whakaroe ke mai nei ki runga nui tēnei whenua tā ngai o Waikato Tainui. A tēnā koutou katoa. Ko tātou e whakaeke nei ki tēnei wahanga o te tau, arā ko te puanga, ko te matareki he rāhiri ki ngā mate e norera ki a rātou, kua whetūrangi tia haere atura. Haere atura ki te matu nui te rangi, ki te iwi nui te pō, ki te oranga mutunga kore. E kia nei te kōrero he pai maunga tū te ao tū te pō, he pai tangata ngaro no atu. Nā ko nāno ki a koutou katoa, e tai mā i aku rangatira, e whakarangatira I tēnei noho tahi o tātou, wānanga tahi o tātou, kōrero tahi o tātou, kei te mihi mai te whānau o te wānanga aronui o Tāmaki Makaurau, AUT, tēnā koutou katoa. Kua rangatira tēnei hui I te hunga kua tai mai, nōrere ngā minita o tira ki a koe, I te minita Andrew Little e mihi ana. Kōrua tahi ki a koe e hoa Peeni, minita Peeni Henare e mihi ana. Tātura ki a koe minita William Sio e mihi ana ki a koe o tira ki a koutou katoa e whakakanohi nei I tērā o ngā whare miere o tira koutou katoa I aku rangatira. Tātura ki a koe Ashley Bloomfield, koutou katoa Rob Campbell, Tipa Mahuta, koutou e arahi nei, e uringi nei, e hautu nei I tēnei waka hau, me te whakamānu o tēnei waka kei roto I te wai, kia kaha, kia maia, kia kotahi te hoe, ki te hoe, tātou mā tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ore te whānau. My name is Valent Smith. I'm here representing the whānau of AUT, and the whānau whom I refer to are the thousands of students and the thousands of staff here at Te Wānanga Aronui o Tāmaki Makaurau. Wānanga is to have this robust discussion. Aro is to understand and nui at a huge, great, robust level. So we're going to have a robust discussion today, and we only can have that robust discussion with all the people in the room. I refer to the term Tihei Māori Ora. Behold the breath of life, calling back to the utterance of Te Reo Māori, behold the breath of life. And if I can be so bold and use that as a metaphor for our hui today, the tihei is the spark, the breath, the infusion of Māori life force and principle into a kaupapa, indeed the kaupapa ahead of us right now. Therefore, the Māori is the collective energy and life principle. In Star Wars, they call it the Force. And so the Force surrounds you, penetrates you, binds the galaxy together, binds ourselves to a specific purpose and kaupapa. And that can only be done with everyone in the room, indeed everyone outside the room, which includes all of our communities here in Aotearoa. And of course, the Tihei Māori Ora leads to the final state, which is ora, health and well-being. Very simple, ora. Nō reira, tēnei te mihi ake ki ngā ingoa arā ko aka, ko whatu, whai ora. Kia tātou katoa, aha ko wai, aha ko nohia. Nō reira mihi ana ki ēnā ingoa, e mihi ana ki ngā rangatira kei wainganui, ki tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou. On the run sheet, mabuna taku wai te hoi no. Kaue hare ki ore ki reira, tēnā koutou katoa, kahuri.
Tu e tipu e rea, ka tipu koe he tangata karuru e, koe ki te tuauri hei amonga mōhau ki te pūtake o ngā kōrero. E aku nui, aku rahi, aku whakatamarahi ki te rangi, tēnā koutou katoa. Matariki hunga nui, matariki a hunga nui. He wā tika o te tau, kia te tirohia tātou ki ngā mate huho o te wānei aha kōko ai aha kōnohia. E tika ana me mihi atu kia Ngāti Haua te wehe ngātu o tō rātou tumaki. O te atu rā nā mate huhua o te wānei aha kōko ai aha kōnohia me te whakaaro ki a rātou moi mai rā oki ai. Haere whaka te tuke rau ki rungi te ara wairua ki te whārone roa tōhe ki ngā wāhi tapu i korā ki waingurunguru ki Maringiro. Whakarere atu rātou ki te rerenga wairua ki te reinga. Kaure atu i te mōna ki manawa tāwhi. Au peke i te maunga e tū mai rā ki ohau te tiro whakamuri. Haere tonu rātou ki tawhiti nui, ki tawhiti roa, ki tawhiti pāmama. Ko rātou ki a rātou, ko tātou nā waihotanga ake o rātou mā ki a tātou. Nā reira huri rauna tēnā no koutou katoa. Ka whakarere atu rā te mahara ki tū o te mōna ni ākiwa ki whiro te tipo manatu. Nāna ko tā wake, nāna ko tā whana, nāna ko tama ki te hau, nāna ko tama ki te kapua, nāna ko te haerenga awatea, nāna ko toi te huatahi. Na toi te huatahi ko rauru kītahi, na rauru kītahi ko whātunga puna ariki. Na whātunga puna ariki ko taha titi, na taha titi ko rākai ora, na rākai ora ko rua tapu nui. Na rua tapu nui ko tamatea ki te huatahi, na tamatea ki te huatahi ko puhi whanake, na puhi whanake ko kupe. Te rā tupono o tātou i whai te pai tawhiti. Te rā tupono o tātou e para te huarahi kia whai atu o na uri o te atu rā nā waka maha o tātou. Ana he pērā ki ngā ahuaranga o te rānei. Ka whakatū nā mana hauora hei arahi a tātou i ngā tau kei te neke mai. Ki tā rātou e haere rātou pērā i te waka haurua. Ana ka tika me a te tirohia ki a tātou ki a kupe i tōna whainga. Ko te whainga matua o enei mana hauora, ko te pai ora. He aha tērā ko te oranga tonutanga o te iwi. Ko te oranga o te tangata, ko te oranga o tana whānau, o tana hāpuri, ko te oranga o te taiao, ko te oranga o ngā me hangaia, o ngā hāpuri hangaia e te tangata. Ko te pai tawhiti i whakatakotoria ki mui a tātou, nā tā meihana, jury i whakatakotoria. Ana he whainga tonu mā tātou ko te oranga tonutanga o te iwi. He kaupapa mā tātou katoa tērā. Nā reire e mihi ana ki a koutou katoa e aku rangatira. I whakarangatira tō tātou nei huihuinga i te rānei. I runga i te ohaki, i te manoko, kia noho nā tangata katoa a Aotearoa. Kia whai atu, kia puawai ai rātou katoa i te ao nei. Nā reira, e aku nui, aku rahi, aku whakatamarahi ki te rangi. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Tūtira mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Tūtira mai ngā iwi, tātou e. Whai a te maramatanga me te aroha e ngā iwi kia tapatahi kia kotahira tātou e tātou e. E tika ana nā kupu kōrero o te amorangi wi te tauhuata, tūtira mai ngā iwi tātou e. Nā reira huri rauna, tēnā no tātou katoa.
Tēnā no tātou. Te mea tūtai mā koe miha ti ki a koe te tuakana e Valence ki a koe hoki e John. Kōrua nei kua whakatinanatia ngā wai o ngā mātua tūpuna no reira. Tēnā kōrua, tēnā kōrua. Good morning everybody and welcome. Welcome to the beginning, I guess, of a new day, of a new dawn, of a new health system. Welcome also to those of our colleagues who are joining us online. My name is Chad Paraone. I'm Uri of Te Aupōuri and Naitau. Pleased to be here today to run through the events today. We'll be having a series of speeches from our ministers and from some of the leaders in our health system, including Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, Dr. Diana Safati. We'll bring Stephen McKernan through, chairs of our boards, Rob Campbell and Tupa Mahuta. And there'll be a procedure as well where we will hand over taonga associated with the names of the new entities. We also have the privilege today of being able to bring via video broadcast, Tā Mason Jury, and words from Rāhui Papa who bring those together. So that will be the proceedings for today. We'll look to wrap up at around about 12 this morning. The day kicked off just before dawn this morning up in Waitangi. And it was a request from our minita to begin this day and this launching of the health system at a place where so much of our history orients ki te tautokero ki Waitangi rā. So what we might do is I might ask our text to perhaps show some short clips, highlights from this morning's ceremony, and then we'll turn to our procedure proper. Tēnā koe.
So today, as is tradition in Māori, we give prayer to the opening of a new kaupapa, which we are here today, so that the rising sun gets to bless our kaupapa, which is why we come together in the morning. And now to have a kaupapa like this, te aka whai ora and te whatu ora, two kaupapa that will change this country moving forward, which is why, for at least my part, I think it's important we start this way. It makes it fitting to start this historical day here in Te Tautokera, on the grounds of Waitangi, amongst people who were there when this journey first began. It is but for the grace of those that have come before me, I am here today, and we are all here today to celebrate the establishment of our independent Māori Health Authority, Te Aka Whaiora.
You know, I couldn't help but shed a few tears in there as our kaumātua ushered in the names. The significance is huge.
Te ingoa o te whare aurora aui.
Te whatu.
O te whare haurora aui.
Whilst we're here now, Te Aka Whaiora and Te Whatuora, I'm mindful that if we get to see further, it's because we stood on the shoulders of giants. So it's thinking about all of those who've battled throughout the years to get us here, and what better place to usher in the new era.
Make sure we address those iniquities that are offence that has bedeviled our health system for so long. This kaupapa goes back many decades. So we've got to this point. We've got two organisations in place now. We have a dedicated independent Māori Health Authority. The challenge now is to make it all work, and so there's still plenty more to do to really fix those health inequities for Māori. Then we'll be a way better country for it. We lay some foundations today. We set a bit of a chart for the path forward, but now we've got to do the way.
And now to follow on from our whakatau this morning, I'd like to call on the Reverend Aronga Tusena to provide a blessing to help us smooth the rest of the day.
Honourable Ministers, Members of the Parliament, distinguished and honourable guests, ladies and gentlemen, greetings to you all. It's an honour to be part of the launch of Health New Zealand and Māori Health Authority. This is the day that the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. A blessing for today's occasion is based on these words from the Bible. The steadfast love of the Lord never ceases. His mercies never come to an end. They are new every morning. Great is your faithfulness. Sir Francis Bacon, an English philosopher and statesman in the 16th century, once declared, "It is singularly amazing how long the rotten can hold together." People cling to false hopes, go through empty rituals, and celebrate the past to such an extent that often it has no bearing on the present. There comes a time when the old is no longer sufficient and the new must take its place. there is a time when the rotten no longer holds together and must be replaced by something new. That is when we are due for renewal. A new idea is dawned. We must have faith in it. The word faith is very important, especially in these days. One theologian once said, faith does not have to go with God, heaven, or anything else spiritual. On the contrary, faith changes the landscape of this world. It moves mountains and transplants trees. It's not a passport to heaven, nor is it a belief about God. But faith is a new understanding of the way this world can be. Faith sees with amazing clarity a reality that others don't yet see. Faith is seeing the new reality and working to set it free. It was said that the great Michelangelo attracted a crowd of spectators as he worked. One child in particular was fascinated by the sight of chips flying and the sound of mallet on chisel as the master shaped a large block of white marble. Unable to contain her curiosity, the little child inquired, "What are you making?" Pausing, he replied, "There is an angel in there and I must set it free." Ladies and gentlemen, there is quality and equality in Health New Zealand and Māori Health Authority that must be released. And we all have a part to bring this quality and equality out. That is the beauty of a new day. New mercies are awaiting us. New ideas have come forth. We see that they are new every morning, thus acknowledging that we are on this journey together, and it's not a one-time fix-all. We must have faith. Today is a new day. A new thing is taking place. Forget the former things. Do not dwell on the past. Let us be grateful. Shall I ask everyone to stand as we pray to bless this wonderful day and wonderful occasion? Almighty and everlasting God, looking back, thank you for the work of all DHBs in the past to support and heal our people. Looking ahead, thank you for the gift of knowledge to reform what needs to be done at this time, to ensure quality and equality care amongst our people. Increase in us your gift of faith, that forsaking what lies behind and reaching out to that which is ahead. Bless all the decisions that have been made, putting all this plan into reality. We pray for all the leaders, ministers, CEOs, doctors, scientists, nurses, and all workers taking part in this new venture. Bless them with wisdom and knowledge to do their work. Bless them with love, compassion, and endurance. Gracious God, we ask your blessings upon Health New Zealand and Māori Health Authority. May they accomplish what they set out to do. May the people of this wonderful country of ours receive quality care, support, and healing as a result of this reformation now and always. Amen. Taking part in this new venture. Bless them with wisdom and knowledge to do their work. Bless them with love, compassion, and endurance. Gracious God, we ask your blessings upon Health New Zealand and Māori Health Authority. May they accomplish what they set out to do. May the people of this wonderful country of ours receive quality care, support, and healing as a result of this reformation now and always. Amen. Thank you.
Reo tērā o te minita.
whāwhitai te reo. And so now we turn to the kaupapa te rangane.
Kia hoki tātou I ai nei nea ki roto I te ruma. Ko te reo tērā o te minita, Reverend Arona Tesunga, nāna I whakataki nei I te karakia tīmatanga o te rā. That was the Reverend Arona Tusenga giving the karakia today, and of course before that, John Whanga, Dr. Valence Smith, and very shortly we are going to hear remarks from the Minister of Health, the Honourable Andrew Little, and then following on from the Minister we'll hear from Associate Ministers of Health, Peeni Henare and Aupito William Seal. What you're watching here is happening at AUT Manuko, Tāmaki Makaurau, the beginning of the new health system for Aotearoa. A little bit later on in the program, we'll also hear from Tipa Mahuta from the Māori Health Authority Board. We'll hear from Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, Stephen McKernan, Rob Campbell, Chair of the Interim Health New Zealand Board, of course, from today, Te Whatu Order. We're going to hear from Rahui Papa on the naming of the new entities, Te Akawhai Order and Te Whatu Order. And we will also hear from Tā Mason Jury, speaking to us from his tipuna whare, Te Aorangi, in Fielding, as he looks back on history, significant milestones across the decades to this point for Māori Health in particular, but taking a wider look at the new health system, and specifically, Tā Mason will talk about 5 of the most significant changes that he sees in the new in the new health system, but indeed for the Māori Health Authority. But let's go now back into the room for Honourable Andrew Little, Minister of Health.
Kia ora tātou katoa. Kua tai mai I runga I te kaupapa nui o te rā. He rā whakaherehera. He timatanga hau, he raro o Matariki. Koe nei te rā tuatahi o whare hau o Aotearoa. Kei aku nui, aku rahi, e ngā rauranga tira mā tēnā koutou katoa. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Chet, for your introduction. Thank you, everybody, too, for being here for this very important moment or day. We've had some very important moments already in this day. Can I just acknowledge my colleague, Peeni Henare, and just say, first of all, thank you for that occasion this morning, which brought to light to me a dimension that I had not even up to now fully understood. And it was such an important moment. So thank you. But thank you most importantly for being just an incredibly good colleague to work with. And I think we said from the outset, this kaupapa is going to be a joint venture with us because it has to be. And for giving me the strength of spirit, working with you to work through all the things we had to do once we got the Simpson report, and understand what of that report we were going to go ahead with, and what of that report we were going to go beyond, because we have done. And Peeni, I just want to say thank you, and thank you for just being a colleague and a brother. I don't want to speak too long. There's a lot to get through today, except to reflect. This is an important day for reasons that, for those of you who've been working in the health sector for so long, know that things had to change. It had to change before COVID. And what COVID has done for us over the last 2 years is demonstrate even more so and even more amply why change is needed. And not just changing what we do in hospitals, changing funding models, but changing forms of leadership, changing where decisions get made, changing how decisions get made. And in a country that has spent the last 40 or nearly 50 years truly coming to grips with Te Tiriti o Waitangi and the Crown getting to grips with its true obligations under Te Tiriti o Waitangi, doing something that properly respected that, allowing Māori to lead their people on this most crucial of services, our health services, was absolutely vital. And I think through all the machinations, I think we've got to a point where we are at least a step or two further towards tino rangatiratanga when it at least comes to health. I want to acknowledge the health workforce of today for the phenomenal effort and struggle that workforce has put in the last 2 years, and in one of the most challenging winters that we've had for a long, long time. And I know it's been tough and it has been hard. The reason for this change, and I've described it as, for most people, not visible to the naked eye, because we're talking about structures and what have you, is because we want to change the way decisions are made, because we wanted to change some of those decisions. And we want a health system that fixes people when they're unwell, but does so sort of consistently around the motu. But we also want a system that promotes wellness and well-being, and so that fewer people need the range of health services that we are struggling to keep sustainable at the moment. Of course, we always need health services. Of course, we always need a place to go when we are unwell. But there's more we can do to keep people well before they even get there. And so that's one of the important objectives we have. Can I thank all those who've been members of the interim boards for Interim Health New Zealand and Interim Māori Health Authority. Can I congratulate and welcome those who will be on the boards of Te Whatu Ora and Te Aka Whai Ora, the Health New Zealand and Māori Health Authority boards respectively. And I kind of wish you well. It's more than that, because we're going to continue to work together on that. Because we have got to this point through a lot of hard work, a lot of reflection, and as people have acknowledged, building on the multitude achievements of the past, including those of you who have been parts of DHBs, either on the boards or working for them. But actually there's a whole new round of work that starts from today too. And that is about reshaping the system over time in a measured way, in a way that doesn't disrupt or discombobulate or upset, but actually makes progressive change for a better health system for everyone over a reasonable period of time. That said, look, there's some urgency on some of these things. We've got to get to grips with some of that stuff. But because of how vital health services are, we must manage that change in a way that brings people with us, brings communities with us, brings the health workforce with us, to make that change. What I've been really impressed by is, as I get around the health sector, is just the number of health professionals and others who say, look, gee, can we just get on with this? Could we have this yesterday? That's a good start, but it's just a start. Can I acknowledge too that today isn't just about Te Whatu Ora and Te Aka Whai Ora. It's also about the Ministry of Health. Can I acknowledge Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, who will go down in history as one of the most outstanding Directors General of Health in New Zealand. But actually for the leadership you've shown, not only for COVID, but actually shepherding the ministry through the change that is needed. And about to hand over to Professor Dona Safeti in a month or so's time to continue that change. But there's big change in the ministry. In addition to a number of functions going to Health New Zealand, we're also setting up another organisation today, which is the Ministry for Disabled People. Because for a long time that community has said our issues are not just health issues, and we don't want to be thought of sort of as part of a health framework. We have a whole lot of social supports that we need to be thinking about as well. So we've put those issues into a Ministry for Disabled People. That celebration is going on in Wellington, or about to start in Wellington as well. And then we also have the reinvigoration of iwi Māori partnership boards. We have the new Hauora Māori Advisory Committee that gets kicked off too. So a number of strands all coming together to improve what we can do with our health services, but also, most importantly, as that lodestar or as that beacon towards a journey for better equity in health services for Aotearoa New Zealand. It's long overdue. And Te Aka Whaiora, the Māori Health Authority, will be a leader in improving the equity of our health services, and will work with Pacific communities and others, because there are a range of communities for whom we need to do better when it comes to delivery of health services. I think the future is exciting. But at this point, even on this day, the first day of a new system, it is an opportunity to be seized. I know there are a lot of people out there ready to seize it, and I think the challenge for all those in leadership roles and in new organisations is to give licence to people to seize the opportunity, to make it work, but most importantly, to make it better. The future looks very bright, in my view. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Honourable Andrew Little, Minister of Health, there sharing remarks about the beginning of the new health system, Te Aka Whaiora, the Māori Health Authority and Te Whānau Ora Health New Zealand. And of course, Minister Little and others that are in the room today have come from Waitangi, where this morning a ceremony was held to lift the tapu of those names of Te Whānau Ora and Te Aka Whaiora. We'll hear a little bit more about those names later on in the program, but they have come direct from Waitangi here to Manukau, to AUT, tāma ki makaurau nei, mātau I tēnei wai, whakapāho atu nei ki te motu. Thank you for joining us. This is Chair Paraone in the room now, who is facilitating proceedings in the room now, and we've just heard from the Honourable Andrew Little, Minister of Health. Coming up very shortly, we'll hear from the Associate Minister of Health, the Honourable Peeni Henare, and of course we heard remarks from the Minister this morning, also from Waitangi. And then following on from Minister Henare, we'll hear from the Minister Aotearoa William Seal, Associate Minister of Health, also here. In the room there, we can also see Diana Manuel, Chief Executive of what was the Interim Māori Health Authority, and now Te Aka Whaiora. Let us go back in the room now to Honourable Peeni Henare, Associate Minister of Health.
Kia ora tātou katoa, kua mihia ngā mihi, anā kua tukuna atu I ngā karakia, I ngā ruanuku, e ngā mātanga kōrero, e ngā taumata, kua irihia nei te kaupapa ki te tāhuhu o tō tātou whare e mihi atu ana kia koutou, e te tuakana e Valence, e kara e John koutou. Kāti kia tātou katoa e huitahi mai nei tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou. What's not known as starting in Waitangi was really good this morning because it was dark. Nobody saw me cry. That's how remarkable this day is. It's a day full of emotion. It's a day full of reflection. It's a day full of optimism and a day full of challenges. And it's in that vein to my senior colleague, Andrew. It was said to me this morning in Waitangi, they said to me, boy, I think that's what our ancestors meant when they signed the Treaty of Waitangi. You and Andrew working together. And I want to acknowledge that because the spirit in which we've been able to work together, the spirit in which we've been able to push through some very significant challenges that have been in front of both of us and indeed all of us, I want to acknowledge your commitment in standing shoulder to shoulder with myself, our other colleagues, Opito, Sua William Seal, our other MPs, to make sure that today was a special day, but the start of a journey. Andrew, tēnā koe. When I hear you, Chad, I think of our elders. And this morning, as I reflect on what is a momentous day, I remember my time as a child growing up at the feet of my uncle, Mr. Rob Cooper. And for those of you who know him, he was passionate about health and he was passionate about Māori. And he used to always speak with such commitment and passion. But most importantly, what I heard in his voice was frustration. Frustration because of the services that weren't reaching our people. Frustration because no matter how hard he and so many others had tried, they were unable to get the kind of future that they thought their tamariki and their mokopuna deserved. And so I think of him at a time like this. I think of small occasions that have led to where we are today. And while we only speak about health, actually, for Māori and indeed for everybody is true in New Zealand, health doesn't sit alone in well-being. It sits alongside everything else that we have in life. Housing, education, All of those things matter to the well-being of our people. And I think about how we take small steps to get to where we want to go. I think also about the likes of one of my favourite people, Dr. Pat Ngata, who many of you will know. He took healthcare to a whole other level. He taught us, once again, that we deserve healthcare in the places in which we live. Places like Tolaga Bay, places on the East Coast, places like Moeroa, where I come from in the far north, and of course, places like Tāmaki Makaurau here. I want to acknowledge those giants of the health world who have continued to steer us, and we ask that they continue to guide us well into the future. I won't speak too much longer. Couple more points. We unveiled two very significant names this morning, of which we'll hear about more on very shortly. But I want to touch on the fact that names mean a lot. Names mean everything to our people. We've just recently celebrated a Matariki holiday as a country. And it's true, the words, we came together as one nation under one sky. And as we look towards our kaupapa moving forward, the two names coming together to build a health system that our people deserve excites me. So I want to acknowledge all of those who have worked hard to get us to this day, those who have afforded the wisdom to give names that we have unveiled this morning, those who have put their hands to the hoi to bring us to this momentous occasion. Can I say thank you? In conclusion, I want to just finally say, and for ngā tohunga reo Māori, I'll let you guys translate this one a little bit later. But there was an old kōrero up north after a particular hui that goes, I ngā mate au, ko tutuki katoa waku mahi. What that means, and I'll take linguistic license here. Close your ears, Dr. Valence. What that means is that upon my deathbed, I'll know that I've given it my best. Now, that's not a reflection on those who have already passed. That's a challenge for us here today. To make sure that as we look forward, we seize the opportunities that we have for our tamariki and for our mokopuna. And when you find yourselves in your latter years, when you find yourselves at your sunset, I hope you look back on this day and think between now and your sunset, I ngā mate koe, ko tutuki katoa o mahi. Ka nui tēnei mākue o kuranga tira huri noa tēnā koutou, kia ora tātou katoa.
Te minita tuarua mo te haura o ngai Māori ko the Honourable Peeni Henare tērā, Associate Minister of Health, I ngā ka mate koe, kua tūtuki katoa I o umahi nei, and some striking words there at the end from the Honourable Minister. As Minister Henare there reflects on what is a significant moment, and you would have heard the Minister refer specifically to the unveiling or the lifting of the new names of the entities, Te aka whai ora for the Māori Health Authority and Te whatu ora for Health New Zealand. And of course, they were interim entities until today. So that was Honourable Peeni Henare. For those of you just joined, you are watching the live stream of the beginning of the new health system for Aotearoa, New Zealand, pai ora, the beginning of our new health system. We are very shortly going to hear from Opito Williams-Seal, Associate Minister of Health, who will also share remarks on the new health system specifically for Pasifika communities. And then following on from Minister Seal, we will hear from Tar Mason, jury, of course, an esteemed leader of health, and shares some striking history of the past, the present, and indeed the future. But right now, let's go back into the room for Minister Opito Williams-Seal.
Kātingi te kākā, kātingi te hei Māori ona. Manatu i aso whapenei. Whamai upoto ina e le whalala fuala a wale mau. Pe ala ona whalala ona wangi le matangi. Manatu foi o lupe sa bau e sese. A le nei wa fui fantasi. And I use that to acknowledge, taking linguistic license, the trees of the forest do not move without reason. They move when the winds are blowing. And I acknowledge many of you are significant individuals in our community and the health system as well. I also acknowledge prize pigeons of different forests have gathered. They have gathered today because of the significance of this occasion. Warm Pacific greetings to you all. I want to acknowledge my ministerial colleagues, the Honourable Andrew Little, who has led this work, and supported by Honourable Peeni Henare, myself, and Dr. Verrill. I want to acknowledge the board members, the chief executives, and all our health and community leaders present here today, my parliamentary colleagues who are present, and more particularly also the members of the Pacific Caucus. These reforms represent a significant step forward for our health system. We often use the phrase, it takes a village, to give expression to the networks required to wrap around individuals and their families. This is especially true when it comes to health and well-being. That is what this government aspires for in these reforms, to create a health system that can and does wrap around and support every New Zealander in a way that best suits them, their family, and their wider community. Our differences should not and must not define the level of access to or quality of healthcare we receive. However, too often we have seen exactly that. People unable to access healthcare due to their ethnicity, disability, cultural needs, gender, sexual identity, where they live, or even their own health conditions. You will have often heard Minister Little, myself, and other ministerial colleagues say, our Pacific communities have long experienced unacceptably poor health outcomes. Many of you here know what I mean. Racism in the health system, fewer years of life expectancy, preventable deaths and illnesses. We live it, we see it in our communities. It's not just bad statistics for us, it is our lives. Many of our Pacific health providers here, based in South Auckland, gateway to the nation, land of the young, beautiful and gifted, and home of world champions, on the front line see firsthand these realities. You have fought admirably for many years. And while the fight is not over, I'm confident that this shift will provide greater support to the wonderful work you already do. The system we're launching today is all about addressing and eliminating those inequities. That is at the heart of the reform and should never be lost as we move forward together. I repeat again for everyone. The reforms by this government is to address the inequities, especially faced by Māori, by Pasifika, people with disabilities, or those in isolated and rural communities. Today, I'm looking forward to a health system where Pacific families can get better care closer to home, where cultural intelligence, language, and values are integral to services and models of care, and where everyone gets taken seriously and treated well wherever they walk through the door. I'm looking forward to focusing on growing our Pacific Health workforce, supporting more of our youth, our future leaders, so that our workforce is as diverse as the communities of Aotearoa, New Zealand it serves. I'm looking forward to Pacific peoples having more of a voice to shape the services and inform the decisions in our communities and at all levels of our system. There is so much valuable expertise in our communities, many lessons to be learnt from the amazing work that Pacific providers have been doing for decades, but particularly over the last 2 years of the COVID-19 pandemic. This collaborative, community-based approach is what I can't wait to see more of. We know this works for our families, not just Pacific, but many of our communities. While I recognize the work of our Pacific health providers, these benefits are not only limited to people of Pacific heritage. This richness that our people bring to the health workforce is not only beneficial for our own communities, but other New Zealanders. As I have traveled the country, I have seen people of many different ethnicities and identities seeking out care from both our Pacific and Māori providers. Many New Zealanders identify with our shared values of alofa, respect, reciprocity, whanaungatanga, or our ainga. The mainstream systems have much to learn from these cultural values that shape holistic approaches to health and well-being. Approaches that don't only better support our Māori and Pacific families, but everyone in Aotearoa. The communities who have been historically undeserved by the healthcare system are a diverse and far-reaching group. Māori, Pacific peoples, disabled, the rainbow communities, Asian peoples, refugee and migrant communities, and rural communities. Each of these individuals and communities have specific and often unique needs. In order to remove the gaps in equity of access and outcomes, we must understand and work with these communities to respond to their aspirations, strengths, and need. Given the diversity and number of individuals and communities who have been undeserved, they must be at heart of how we strengthen services and access and outcomes. We have a saying in Samoa, e fufo le ala mea, the solutions for our challenges lie within communities. I use this to underpin my health approach, but also to remind officials at all levels of government to recognise they do not have a monopoly on ideas and answers and solutions. The community will often have experiences that are simpler and more practical. COVID-19 has shown us the importance of listening and partnering with communities and of a strong public health system. I want to acknowledge my colleague, the Honourable Dr. Vero, who is leading the establishment of the Public Health Agency and National Public Health Service. While she could not be here with us today, I want to acknowledge her advice and support to myself and my colleagues. Her insight as a medical professional has been invaluable, and she too shares a passion for ensuring our undeserved communities are not left behind and do not miss out any longer. COVID-19 has shown us how well our health system works when we're all working together, when we put aside our differences, what provider you might work for, what agency you report to. When we put patients, our communities back at the centre, this is exactly what the creation of Health New Zealand and the Māori Health Authority is all about. Today, we mark the beginning of the single national health system we've aspired to and many people have worked hard to bring into being. Our first steps are the establishment of Health New Zealand and the Māori Health Authority. I want to congratulate and thank everyone involved in the transition unit, and I especially want to acknowledge the Pacific team, admirably led by Geraldine, and I acknowledge Dr. Sir Colin Tukuetonga, I should say, Dr. Debbie Ryan, Dr. Api, and Dr. Karina Gray, and the many others, in particular also the Pacific Expert Advisory Group, and those seconded from the Ministry of the MPP who were part of that transition unit. To the chief executives, the chairs, and the board members, I acknowledge the role that you will play in making a difference to many, many lives in Aotearoa, New Zealand. Good luck, and please ensure you hold fast to the why. All of you here today who work in health, I'm sure you are here today because we love our people, our communities. We want the best health for all New Zealanders, and I remind each of us in all the roles we play to do it with them at the centre. Finally, my elders say, e leo le fale au le ano fale. It's not the structure or the buildings or the systems that are important, but they are. But of greatest importance is people and whether those structures and systems serve the common good and, most importantly, the most vulnerable in our communities. Soifua mai manuia, kia kaha.
Ki te reo kōrero tērā o te minita tuarua mō ngā take o te hauora. That is O. Peter William Seal, Honourable Peter William Seal, Associate Minister of Health, sharing remarks. And that ends and concludes the remarks from ministers this morning. And you are watching from AUT in Manukau and Tāmaki Makaurau, Pai Ora, the beginning of the new health system for Aotearoa, New Zealand. Really good to have you here, wherever you are in the motu. Ki te whānuitanga o te motu, tēnei e mihi atu nei kia tātou I tēnei rā nei. E he rā nui tēnei, he rā whakahira ira tēnei. Mā tātou katoa Aotearoa whānui. Really good to have you here. We are very shortly going to hear some remarks from Tā Mason Jury. And here's now from Aorangi Marae.
Neke mai ki ruahine maunga, ko ngā tihi taumata e tu atu nei. Tuki ake ki te rangi rere atu ki te ao, he ao he aorangi e. Nō reira, e ngā reo ngā kārangatanga maha, koutou te tai tukurau o tāmaki makaurau hoki, tēnā koutou. Tēnā hoki koutou mai ki tēnei o tātou marae ko aorangi, ko tai nui te Waka, ko Ngāti Kauwhata te iwi, ko tāhuri Waka nui te hapū, ko mani aihu tēnei whare, ko aorangi tō tātou nei marae. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. Kei te mihi hoki ki a kōro rā ngā mereta hauora, nā tā koutou mahi, nā koutou pūmau tonu, ki a tai atu mātou ki tēnei rā. He toa, he rangatira kōrua. So today really is a great day for Aotearoa. It's a momentous day. 100 years ago, in 1922, Te Rangi Hiroa, who was director of the newly established Division of Māori Hygiene within the Department of Health, he was actively promoting Māori councils as key contributors to Māori health gains. Decades later, at the Hui Whakaoranga, officials from the Department of Health were asked to give us the money and we will do the job. Later, recommendations for a Māori Health Authority were made at conferences in 1991, the 1991 conference, again in 1994, and then in 2019, at the Toitu Hauora conference, a convincing recommendation for a Māori Health Authority was widely endorsed. So here we are today, 100 years after 1922, about to embark on a journey that is built on foundations from the past, but we're ready to face the future. Te Paiora can be viewed from several perspectives, but my view is that there are 5 markers that are distinctive and that characterise the new system. The first marker recognises Te Kaunata o Waitangi, the Treaty of Waitangi, and it recognises it in a more overt way than in any previous health reform. The treaty principle of partnership between the Māori Health Authority and Health New Zealand also enables Māori health concerns and aspirations to be reflected across the whole system. The second marker of Paiora is an emphasis on kotahitanga, collaboration. Collaboration will be absolutely critical in this new system. A third marker of the reforms gives emphasis to kāinga tūturu community voices. Iwi Māori partnership boards will be at the forefront for many Māori communities and will be strong voices for their people. The fourth marker I've suggested is kāhui mātauranga, a collective workforce. The health workforce needs to be skilled, well-informed, able to apply learning to real situations and to be in touch with their communities and localities. And finally, a fifth and overriding marker of the reforms is a common goal, kia piki te ora, celebrating health and well-being. The impact of Paiora will be reflected in the well-being of all our people. While there will be different pathways, all Paiora pathways will share a common overall goal, kia piki te ora, health and well-being. It is a goal that should not be lost sight of. So once again, our sincere thanks and congratulations to all who have taken us to this point in time so that we can celebrate the launch of Paiora. And to those of you who will now make the efforts over past years come alive, you have the potential to radically change our futures. O tira mea haere koutou I rongo I ngā tapawai o rātou I whakawātea te ara. Kia tū tonu mai tātou katoa I roto I te hauora. Kia kaha, kia maia, kia ora.
Tiro tiro, ka au ki marae, ka inga.
O te rangatira tērā, ko te reo o tā Mason Jury, mai I tōna tipuna whare, mai I te whare o te aorangi. That was Tā Mason Jury sharing reflections there. Me tōna ki atu nei, Me haere tātou ki runga I te ara kua whakawātea I ngā tipuna. Let us go forth on the pathway cleared by our ancestors. And now we're going to hear from Stephen McKernan, who has been the Director of the Health Transition Unit within the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, of course, the unit that has been working on the reform program to help establish the new health entities of what we know today as Te Aka Whai Ora and Te Whatu Ora. Shortly after we hear from Stephen, we will then hear from Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, a stranger to nobody, indeed, and following that, Dr. Diana Sarfati, who's incoming Director General of Ministry of Health. But let us go back into the room to Chair Paraone, who's now going to bring Stephen McKernan, Director of the Health Transition Unit from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet.
Stephen, this week of all weeks, unfortunately caught COVID. So has had 2 years of slog on those shoulders, was unable to be in person, but we're bringing him in live now via video. Stephen, tēnā koe.
Tēnā koe, Chad. Ena iwi, ena reo mihi, rao rangatira mat, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou kua hui mai nei, I rongo tuko papa o taranei. Kina ma te haere, haere, haere. Haere ki te kāinga tūturu mo tātou. Kia tātou nā hongo ora, tēnā koutou katoa. Well, good morning, everybody. Today is indeed a very significant occasion, as others have said, and I am very sorry that I cannot be there in person. I'd like to acknowledge the ministers, Minister Little, Minister Henare, and Minister CO, for your guidance and work with us over the course of this last 22 months. To distinguished guests, I acknowledge you all. To the chairs and the boards of Te Aka Whai Ora, Te Whatu Ora, I acknowledge and I congratulate you on your positions moving forward. To Margie and Rihanna, all the very best from today. The people you are, the experiences, the skills, and importantly, the empathy you hold are the very reasons why you are the right leaders to lead these important new entities and the aspirations that we all have for this reform forward. To you, Ashley, I want to acknowledge the incredible role that you have undertaken these past 4 years, your leadership, the navigation, and your stewardship of our system over this period. To you, Di, all the very best in this key leadership role. You have huge support, and I know you are looking very much forward to working with Margie and Rihanna to take this kaupapa forward. And while today is the beginning of a new system, it's also the end of a long road that started back in 2018 with the Health and Disability Review led by Heather Simpson. A review that looked deep into the health system and put forward a challenge that we can and should do better, particularly for Māori, for Pacific people, for people with disabilities, for those in our rural communities. As Chad said, it was in August 2020 that I was asked if I would lead the transition unit and the government's response to this review program being set up in DPMC, to report to the Ministerial Oversight Group consisting of the Prime Minister, the Minister of Finance, the Minister of Health, the Associate Minister of Health, Minister Henare, and Minister Sepuloni, the Minister for Disabilities. I want to acknowledge the role and the leadership that this group of ministers provided to the work of the transition unit, the timely feedback and the advice over this period of time. Over the course of 5 months, we developed the new operating model for our health system, from the shifts needed to achieve real transformation to the new accountabilities, the new roles, the new functions, all underpinned by a key set of principles, the principles around achieving equity, te tiriti, to ensure the system is more whānau and patient-centred, a more sustainable system and a system that achieves excellence in its provision and takes out the sorts of variation that we see. Once announcements were made in April last year, we moved quickly to implementation. And at this time, I want to acknowledge the appointment of Tā Mason jury, the intellect and the mana that Tā Mason brought to that program of work, the appointment process for the interim Māori Health Authority, the 30 hui that were undertaken up and down the country We reconsidered the roles and powers and functions of iwi Māori partnership boards and the overall legislative construct. Through this period, the team brought together the bill, the Paiora Bill, and we had this completed within 4 months of the system operating model being announced. And I want to acknowledge places that don't often get recognised. I want to acknowledge the place that Parliamentary Council Office, PCO, played through this period of time. This time also saw the creation of the consumer framework through the Health Quality and Safety Commission, and that work continues. And I want to acknowledge the work of Dr. Janice Wilson, Dale Bramley, and the team there at the Quality and Safety Commission. The standing up of the interim boards, the Section 11 committees, also occurred during this time, progressing through the establishment of work streams for the health plan, the health charter, the prototypes, the commissioning frameworks, before transitioning these programs through to HNZ and the Māori Health Authority last November. Through this design phase and subsequent implementation phase, we ran over 500 stakeholder engagement sessions and meetings with a huge range of groups and stakeholders seeking feedback and input into this work. I want to acknowledge all those people, those sector leaders, those groups and stakeholders who contributed to this mahi during this period of time. I'd also like to acknowledge the boards of the district health boards and the chief execs of the DHB system through this time who willingly gave and professionally gave their advice to work constructively on the reform agenda, even though they didn't know what it would mean for them now and into the future. I would like to acknowledge my colleagues in the Treasury and the Public Service Commission and the leadership team of the Ministry of Health who have worked with us through this period, and my colleagues in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet. And I want to particularly call out the Chief Exec of that department, Brooke Barrington, for his support for our team and for the work that we have undertaken. Lastly, I want to acknowledge the incredibly talented team that worked in the transition unit over this time. Your dedication, your professionalism, and the quality of work that you have produced has been simply amazing. You all know who you are. I know some of you are in the audience there today, and I thank you. As this time of Matariki, I've been reflecting a lot this past week of my time in Te Tokerau and also the Bay of Islands. I've thought a lot about the Kevin Primes of this world, the Gwen Tiffany Palmers, the Rob Coopers, the Eda Maheraris, and the John McLeods. People who would be looking down today and reflecting well on the announcements and this journey that is being part ahead of us here at this point in time. And here to launch a reformed and national system in the heart of South Auckland is really special. It is right and proper that Manukau is the beating heart of this reformed health system, and it is right and proper that this launch is here today. As I look to start closing this chapter of my career, I just want to end by reiterating how important it is that we all know that transformation will only happen if we keep pushing for it. Over the coming months and years, this reform will be successful when it changes the hearts and minds of the people who work within it. And for the whānau across Aotearoa, who now have expectations of a better, more equitable system. The need to prove that we're doing better and show evidence of the value that this new system is adding is critically important. And while it will always be tempting to leave some things as they are, or get blocked by parts of the system today which are entrenched and hard to shift, it will be important to see us focus on the opportunity and refuse to compromise on the values and the priorities that have brought us here today. Nō reira, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
Ko ngā kupu o te ngākau ko Stephen McKernan. That is Stephen McKernan, Director of the Health Transition Unit from the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, and Stephen and the team have led the Reformer Programme of Work. And here we are here in the room in Manukau, as Stephen said, broadcasting to you live across the motu, the Paiora beginning of the new health system. We are very shortly going to hear from the Director General of Health, Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, and we'll also, I believe, have remarks from the incoming Director General of Health, Dr. Diana Sarfati. And here they are going to the lecture. Now let us go back into the room for Dr. Ashley Bloomfield.
Kia ora koutou katoa, ministers. Just want to acknowledge you here and other health leaders and people from the system. It's wonderful to be here today, and Minister, thank you very much for your kind words. Today is a special day. It marks a significant opportunity that we all, I am sure, wish to embrace to really strengthen and improve New Zealand's healthcare system. And how appropriate, as others have remarked, that it is at the time of Matariki and we can look back and appreciate and be grateful for and remember what's gone before. We can celebrate the present, but importantly, we can look forward to the future with optimism and with hope. Manatū Hauora and our DHBs, which finished up their work last night, have a long history of serving New Zealanders, and I want to acknowledge those who have been part of that service over the last 20 years in particular. And the last 2.5 years have brought particular challenges that it has been remarkable to see people rise to, and they have, as ministers have mentioned, also highlighted the challenges in the structure and in the functioning of our prior system. Despite those challenges, people rose to the occasion and stood up a response to COVID-19 that was world-leading and that fundamentally protected our people, and in particular, a key driver for us, protected our most vulnerable communities. And we can celebrate that. And what we can also celebrate is that the relationships that were strengthened, the great progress we made in many areas, including and in particular perhaps in our data and digital areas, in the employment of new models, particularly the great expansion of our Māori and Pacific providers and the investment there, provides a really strong platform for us as we move into this next phase. The reforms are looking to achieve outcomes that we all aspire to, and I can assure you and give certainty today that the leaders and teams inside Manatū Hauora, the Ministry of Health, are totally behind and ready to embrace and support this change to the system and the new role that we will be embracing. That role has two key features. One is our strengthened stewardship function, our responsibility to make sure the system delivers better, provides better and more equitable access to, experience of, and outcomes of care for all people now and into the future. And Di will talk a little bit about that shortly. And secondly, our leadership role. And all I can say about that is we will continue to lead in the way we have endeavoured to lead over these last few years. And that is that leadership is an invitation to collective action. And so I will be, and I know Di and other leaders in the Ministry of Health will be working alongside and with leaders in these other two organisations that have been launched today to achieve what we all aspire to. And finally, I believe we can look forward with hope and optimism to the future because I have great faith, and faith has been talked about, I have great faith in the people who work in the system, and of the leaders in the system, I have great faith in Margie and Rihanna as they take on formally their new roles. I have a lot of faith in Dr. Andrew Auld, who's here today, who's stepping up to lead the new Public Health Agency. Thank you, Andrew, for taking that role on. But most importantly, and for me, as I step down in a month's time, I can do so with great peace of mind because I have enormous faith in the person standing next to me, Professor Diana Sarfati, who I've known for 20 years. We did our public health training together. And so I'm really grateful that Di has agreed to step into the role of Acting Director General of Health, and I have enormous confidence and faith in her in taking on that role. Tēnā koe, Di.
Tēnā koutou katoa, e ro rangatira mā tēnā koutou. Ki ngā mana whenua o tēnei rohi, tēnā koutou, nō reira tēnā koutou. Ashley, thank you very much for that lovely welcome handover. Yours are large shoes to fill, and I have quite small feet, so that's a little bit daunting. But your time in leadership has covered a period which by any measure has been extraordinary. So it's a real honour to be stepping into this role. During my time as Chief Executive of Te Aho Te Kahu, I have had the opportunity to work across the whole of the health system, frequently in collaboration with Manatū Hauora, with district health boards, with Māori Health leaders, with communities and others around the motu. And this has given me a strong sense of what is possible when we all work together for those common goals of improving health and well-being and eliminating inequities in health in Aotearoa, New Zealand. It's a real privilege to step into this role of Director General. I look forward to playing my part in leading the health system alongside Margie and Rihanna and the others in Te Aka Whaiora and Te Whatu Ora. I am focused on ensuring that Manatū Hauora can effectively and seamlessly strengthen its role as Chief Steward of the system. So as stewards, we will provide coherent, system-level leadership that aligns priorities relating to health and well-being across the health system and across government more generally. We'll drive system strategy and performance and be responsible for national health regulation. We'll be the government's primary advisor on health, priority setting, policy and system performance. We'll be responsible for horizon scanning and providing government-level leadership, including advice on those really important broad determinants of health and well-being, taking a medium and long-term investment focus on health. Manatū Hauora is experienced in these roles, but our role as steward will be made much more practical by the bringing together of the operational delivery of health services under Health New Zealand. This division of responsibilities allows us the opportunity to strengthen our respective roles and functions so that people can focus on their jobs and the system can reach its full potential. We will ensure that all parts of the system are working well together to deliver high quality, equitable healthcare to all New Zealanders in a sustainable way. These reforms provide a mandate to explore new ways of doing things and grow capabilities to support the success of the system as a whole. And this is something I'm really looking forward to as I take on this role of Acting Director General of Health. A major focus of Manatū Hauora, and for me personally, will be on equitable health outcomes and meeting our tiriti o Waitangi obligations. Tackling the gap in access and health outcomes with a focus, particularly on Māori and also Pacific people, disabled people and vulnerable people, is key to the success of these reforms. And I'm looking forward to working with colleagues in Te Whaiora and Te Whatu Ora. Apologies, I'll get those. I'm also delighted to see the establishment of the Public Health Agency within Manatū Hauora, which indicates a strengthened focus on public and population health, another area that's dear to my heart. We have big challenges and huge opportunities ahead of us, but the changes we start to make today will have a lasting impact on future generations. And I feel very excited and privileged to be part of the start of this journey. Nō reira, tēnā koutou. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa.
We've just heard from Dr. Ashley Bloomfield, the Director General of Health, and no doubt not a stranger to anybody, and that was Dr. Diana Sarfati, incoming Director General of Health. And we are now about to cross in to hear from Rob Campbell, who has been the Chair of Interim Health New Zealand, Chair of what will now be called Te Whatu Ora, or the weaving together of health. After Rob Campbell's spoken, we'll hear from Tipa Mahuta from the board of the Interim Māori Health Authority, or of course from today, Te Aka Whaiora. And then we'll hear from Rahui Papa about the names of those entities, and you heard Dr. Diana Sarfati talk about Te Whatu Ora and Te Aka Whaiora. But let's go to Rob Campbell now, back in the room.
Kia ora tātou. I seem to be acquiring an undeserved reputation for being a bit impatient and blunt. I don't want to let you down. When you've got a big job to do, it's usually helpful to make it as simple as it can possibly be. And for me, that's one of the key things to focus on as we start this journey. Our job as the board of Te Whātuora is simply to assist the tens of thousands of people who work in the public health system and the even greater number who work in funded private and community and iwi groups to deliver more equitable, more efficient, more effective, more accessible, but excellent health services. To those people working in health, or who may be considering working in health, I say this: we want you. We need you. With apologies to Meatloaf, 2 out of 3 may not be bad, but it's not good enough. We will awhi and respect you in your work as well. This support and respect is essential. It is the people who do the work who make the difference. The best policy or operating system, the best technology or well-drafted contract are only as good as the skill and motivation of the people making them go. We are blessed by having many skilled and dedicated people with well-motivated unions and well-motivated professional organisations. Our task is to work together, to shift the words off paper and out of the negotiating room and into actions that are taken together. To the managers and administrators in our structure, I acknowledge your role in assisting this. Your role from today is not one of management control and protecting past practices. It is one of enabling new and better practices. We need to be disciplined and careful in our spending, but remember that no one works for us. We all work for those who need us. Ask, should we, not can we or have we. Ask, is there a better way, not is this the usual way? And don't just ask yourself, but ask those working with us. We have to shift energy and resources to where they are best applied. This will mean letting go of many old ways of doing things. I say, let them go. We need action groups and change agents in our system. We're none of us here to stagnate or to allow the various crises in our health system to continue. The wider current system has also many old practices which have to go. They're not all in the hospitals or in the facilities that we run. Those who are funded by us are subject to the same demands and policies on equity, efficiency, effectiveness, accessibility and excellence that we apply to ourselves. We're not just here to fund your business plan. We will support what supports our goals and what communities demand, not just what has been done in the past with an inflation adjustment when the time comes along. Expect to change. The same goes, of course, for businesses seeking to sell us their wares and services. We're driving hard for our goals, our community goals, and not just your current plan. Expect us to be hard, demanding and fair in our negotiations with you. We are building a genuine national health service, so don't expect to be able to pick and choose where and best suits you to sell to us. To other government and non-government agencies, we must work together. Housing, education, social support and health are all silos that fall over if they stand alone, and they fall on those they are supposed to help. Often we know what is needed and how to do it, but we let agency structures and procedures get in the way of doing it. Let's get over that by simply doing what needs to be done. We need immigration, for example, right now, to join the cause, the registration agencies and the training schools to join with them to resolve the many staffing issues that we have. To our brothers and sisters in Te Aka Whaiora. We have prepared together for this. We have learned together. Our structures are woven together for a common good. We will face any challenges together as genuine treaty partners. We expect you to teach and to challenge us, and we know that you will hear our voice if we hear yours. We must have confidence in each other. Those approaches are what a board can do, but we're a small part of the task. We will be supportive but demanding that all leaders in Te Whatu Ora meet the standards. And that includes ourselves as board members. We're all accountable. It's not him or her or them, but we, for the health of our communities. So today is a step on our way. Let's get on with it.
Tēnā koe, Rob, and I think that challenge for action, I think, will be greatly embraced by many of our colleagues in the sector. Tēnā koe. I want to turn now to our Māori Health Authority, e kia nei, ko te aka whai ora. And at this time, I want to ask Tipa Mahuta on behalf of the board and that to come forward and share her words. Tēnā koe te tuahine, Tipa.
Ko te aka whai ora e mihi nei, kia koutou kua tai mai ki te whakanui e. Ko tōna piringa, ko te atua, ngā kōrero whakapono o ngā tūpuna mātua e. Tēnei te kauenga o haki, I waihotea maira a kui a koroma. Ti hei mauri ora. Nau mai hara mai ki te rā whānau o te aka whai ora. Aha kua tuatu I ngā kōrero o te atu nei, ko tātou ke te kaupapa nui whakahara o te rā. Nā, mauri ora ki a koe hoki, Rob. Ki ngā whakarere kētanga, kei te whakanui tātou I te rangi nei, nei anō te mihi ki a tātou. Tēti me te mano kua tai mai, ki wainga nui I a tātou. Ki tāmaki nei. Nōku te whiwhi I te mea timata taku rā I te toke rau ki te taha o tōku whaia. Tai noa mai ki roto I au anō, I tāmaki, ki roto I tōku ahurea. Nō reira, nōku anō te whiwhi e te iwi nui tonu ko tai tātou ki tēnei wā. I just wanted to celebrate our birthday because everybody else has been around some time. So just headlining that, media notes, thank you very much, kia ora. And just thank you for, again, everything that came before today and all the effort that has been spoken to from the many. And I think Tameihana sums it up really well, saying in 100 years, this is where we've come to a day where we are now celebrating. The Māori Health Authority promised, I think I might have been 10 in those hui. There'll be a lot of other authorities too at Te Minita that people want to set up as a result. But again, it's a day, a coming of age, as Pou Te Mara said about Matariki. A coming of age of our nation, celebrating ourselves, our uniqueness, our treatiness, our ability to come together in this time. So as you join us, as we launch our waka haurua, our tera haere, know that it's not going to be smooth sailing, as Rob said. Not all change is painful, but it's necessary, so that we can all enjoy the things promised through the reforms that our ministers have aptly talked about. So I do want to acknowledge everybody that's here today, to all our ministers for all your efforts. Minister Little, I listened to you stand for the readings of the bill as it went through, the legislation, and thank you. Thank you for your perseverance. Minister Henare, for forging the belief in our communities, that our whānau can lead our own oranga, and seeing it all the way through today. Nei anō te mihi ki a koe. Minister Seal, for reminding us who we are in our Pacific place and who we are in relation to one another. Yeah. especially here in Manukai, te mānuka nuka o Aotearoa, nau mai, haere mai koutou ki taku whenua. So again, Stephen, everybody's named the names and said the words, but I just wanted to add our thanks as Te Aka Whaiora to everybody that has supported this journey. And there are many, and they're in little communities all over the motu, e oku whaia, e oku mātua, e oku kaumātua, nā koutou ke te mana o tēnei rā. Those of you who hold our communities together, who have held us together for the last 3 years, who have trained all these kaimanaki to love themselves and their hauora aspirations, you are the real champions of today. Ours is but to express your agency very well in the new system. And we will be very sharp, Rob, and pointed and directive, because that's our job. But we also be very good partners. We'll be good partners not only with te whatuora, but also te manatū hauora, nau mai, haere mai, also to all the other parts of the system that we must partner with. Why? Because the treaty needs to be expressed. Aotearoa has come to that time. And we will be very good stewards of that kōrero and good agents of that change, because we know our country is ready. And our country is so ready that we've had matariki, as everybody said. They're ready to go on this paiora journey with us. And we also want to note especially the establishment of the Ministry of Disability today and the voice of our tangata whaikaha as stewards in their own part of the system, and that we're already working with them. So I didn't want, like Rob, to take up too much more of the time telling the story, because you've all heard it, but I do want to honour my co-chair, Sharon Shea, for the work that she's done since the Health and Disability Review and brought us. She is one of the ringa whao of this waka, one of the carvers of the waka, and I'd like to invite Sharon forward. Kia kitea te marea I tō ātāhua e hene. Me tōna pukumahi ki ngā mahi nei. So, nā kua no te whiwhi ki ngā mahi o tō te tuahine. Hawātia te aku.
O tēnā tātou katoa, ngā mihi nui, ngā mihi aroha ki a koutou. First, I'd like to thank the ministers and all our esteemed guests. Ngā mihi nui, ngā mihi nui, ngā mihi nui. You're going to make me cry.
No, we're not, because it's celebrating Pride.
Yeah, we're celebrating our birthday. We're young again. So Tipper has asked me to come up and to acknowledge 4 very special people who we've had the honour of working with. It might be a little bit early in the piece, but anyway, if you give us the latitude, we'll go for it.
We'll go for it.
So there are 4 very special people that we want to honour today. The first is Dr. Chris Tooley and Lady Tudati Moxon. Dr. Chris and Lady Tudati, it has been an absolute privilege to mahi with you over the last 9 months. Chris, you led our mahi in terms of accountability and planning documentation. Your skills and expertise were second to none. Kia ora koe. Lady Tudati, you always reminded us, whānau, whānau, whānau. You held us to the kaupapa. Whānau first, whānau ora, whānau oranga, pai ora. Tēnā korua, tēnā korua, tēnā korua. We also want to acknowledge Vui Mark Goshi and Cassandra Crowley, both amazing partners, and I had the privilege of working with them over the last 9 months in Health New Zealand, and they are staunch advocates for pro-tiriti, pro-equity mahi. So tēnā kōrua to both of you, we mihi to you, and we look forward to working with our beautiful whānau as we move forward together. And to you, Tipa, ngā mihi.
Nō reira, e te iwi, all I can say is the Māori, wēnei rōpu e rua nei, he tira kotahi, he haerenga kotahi kei runga i te moana kia eke ai tātou ki te pai o rangatanga mo tō tātou iwi. And Rob's trying to pinch all the stuff, so don't forget Māori mā, ko koutou ko tā. Kia eke panu ki tātou, kia ora rā.
And we've just heard from Rob Campbell, Chair of Interim Health New Zealand, and that was Tipa Mahuta, and later on in that, Sharon Shea, co-chairs of the Interim Māori Health Authority. Ko te ki Tipa, I roto I tana kōrero nei ko te rā whānau tuatahi o te aka whaiora, talking about the birth of te aka whaiora, the Māori Health Authority. And now very shortly we're going to hear a video from Rāhui Papa, and Rāhui led a group of mātanga reo Māori experts who convened to name the new entities of Health New Zealand and the Māori Health Authority. This video will roll and will tell the story.
Tūria, tūria ki te matahau nō rangi, tūria, tūria ki te matahau nō papa. Pai heretia ki te kawa tupua ki te kawa tawhito. He kawaora, he kawaora. He kawaora ki te tangata, he kawaora ki te whānau, he kawaora ki te iti ki te rahi. He kawata ki mai ki au mau ai. Tūturu o whiti whakamaua kia tīna tīna. Haumi e hui e I tai ki e. Ia mātou ka noho nei ki runga ki te komiti whiriwhiri ki anei ko te steering group I raro ia tā meihana jury. Ko ia tira te āhuatanga ana ka tupu ake te whakaro kia kaua wai honoi honei ko Health New Zealand ko te Māori Health Authority. Engari kia te wairua Māori ki roto I ngā ingoa. A ka mutu I aku toro ki runga ki e te hi atu I whakatūteringa o te rangatira o te tairāwhiti a Herewini Parata, I tūteringa o te kuia o roto o te taitokerau a Moi Mill, I whai whakaro ake ana ko te uru, ko te rāwhiti, ko te mārakiraki, ko te mātongatonga. No reira I tō ia mai taku tāhine a Hannah O'Regan, Arikirangi Gage, ki roto I tehi rōpū whakawhaiti mai ai ngā whakaro. Ka puea mai te whakaro o tēnā, ka puea mai te whakaro o tēnā. Me te mea nei, anō I te whakaro ngā tahi, te hunga nei. Ka kite atu, I enei momo whakaro e rere haere ana, engari ka mātua I runga I te whakaro ki te kōrero mō tāwhaki. Tērā tupuna pai here I ngā iwi katoa o te motu. Engari ka kite ara I roto I ngā kōrero mō te tupuna nei mō tāwhaki, ana ka rongo koe I te wairua o ngā kōrero a te tonga, ngā kōrero a te rāwhiti, ngā kōrero a te tokerau, ngā kōrero roto o tainui, I rā momo āhuatanga I rongo tonu I te wairua. Koe nei taku whakamiharo I te taunga mai o enei kaupapa. A ka mutu ko te whakaro ake, he pēwea te kō tui I te ingoa o te rōpū nui, Peeni Health New Zealand, ki te rōpū iti Peeni te Māori Health Authority, kaua e tino tawhiti atu te tehi whakaro I te tehi. Ana he pēwea te tehi, nge tehi inguarane e tui ana I ngā kaupapa e rua. Anō reira, e whakatauria, no roto mai o te kōrero o tāwhaki, te ingoa o te tehi, ko ia hoki, ko te āhuatanga o te whakaora I te iwi. Ko ira te ito o te whakaro. Me whakakotahi tonu, me hui tōpū tonu, ngā whakaro me ngā mahi o roto I ngā rōpū nei, kia pai ai te whakahiato I te ora o te katoa o Aotearoa. Ana ko ira te wairua o te whakaro I te aranga mai o ngā ingoa. Ko ia ko te o tō tātou tupuna tāwhaki I roto I etahi o ngā hitoria, ko ia te tupuna piki ki ngā rangi ki te kimi I ngā kete o te mātauranga, ngā kete o te wānanga. No reira, pū mai ana, ko te āhuatanga o te whānuitanga, ko te whatu te kupu kua tohua, ko te whatu ora. Ana, I nā rā ko te kōwhatu tera, I nā rā ko te whatu mātakitaki, ko te titiro rānei, I nā rā ko te whatu, ko ko te tui tui, e ai ki te mahi a te raranga. Ko te aka whai ora, ko ia tira te āhuatanga o te aka i piki atu ai. Ko te tohu a te kuia o tāwhaki, ko tāna kōrero kia mau ki te aka matua. Ana, me he mea mau ana tātou ki te aka matua, me mau tonu ki tēnei rā, ko te oranga o te tangata. Nō reira i whakaro atu ai a te rōpū, kia hāngaipū, e nei tūmomo āhuatanga ki ngā kōrero mō tāwhaki, i roto i tāna whakahoki mai te whatu, i roto i tāna āhuatanga i te mau i te aka matua.
We've just heard from Rahui Papa there. Rahui Papa talking about the process of finding those names. I kōrerohia mo te taunga mai, mo te aranga mai o ngā ingoa, rā ko te aka whaiora, ko te whatu ora, ko era, ko aua ingoa e rua nei, i ahu mai i te kōrero, i te pūrākau mō tāwhaki. Koina te kōrero a te whitiki o te ki, koina te kōrero a te whakaniko o te kupu a Rahui Papa. Nāna no i mihi atu, i whakamihia a Selwyn Parata, a Moe Milne, ētahi atu o nā mātanga reo kei te noho ki runa ki taua paipaira. Now, we are going to, as you can see in the room there, we're going to see the passing over of the hoi waka. And now those hoi waka were passed to ministers this morning in Waitangi, and this, as you can see here, is something of a ceremonial passing down of those hoi waka. One of the hoi waka for te whatu ora, and that's going to Chair Rob Campbell, and one of the hoi waka that, for te aka whai ora, going to Tipa Mahuta. And there to the side there you can see Whare Puliai, Margie Apa, Chief Executive of now Te Whatu Ora, and that is Rihanna Manuel, Chief Executive of what is now Te Aka Whai Ora. They are now receiving the hoi waka from the chairs, and these hoi waka, I understand, will live within the whare of the new health system, or of the new health system officers of Te Aka Whai Ora and Te Whatu Ora. So we can see there now the hoi waka, they were officially blessed and passed on this morning in Waitangi. For those of you who are watching the live stream from Waitangi this morning, passed to the ministers who have brought those hoi waka down from Te Tai Tokerau here to Tāmaki Makaurau, and passed through the chairs to the chief executives. We can see them there in frame. That is Rihanna Manuel, Chief Executive of Te Aka Whai Ora, and Whare Puliai Margie Apa, Chief Executive of now Te Whatu Ora. We are nearing the end of the proceedings. Koutou e hika mā koutou e mātaki mai nei, and remember you can go and visit the new websites for the new health system, for the new health entities. We've got thefutureofhealth.govt.nz, and you can also find teakawhaiora.govt.nz and indeed te whatuora.govt.nz. Those sites go live, and you can also re-watch some of the footage from today and some of the videos. We are closing up, and we will go back shortly into the room for the closing karakia as Chad Paraone is just wrapping up there. And before we go, we will have another quick look at that reel from Waitangi this morning as well that highlighted some of the events that happened in the morning. But let us just go back. This looks like Dr. Alan Smith, Vice-Chancellor Māori AUT, to close us.
Te tiriti aku matua tipuna me mōhio nei rātau ka huri pokitia hei patu tonu i ngā uri e. Nā ngā pōwehi e ne o ngā kupu. I do not believe that our ancestors signed the treaty with the understanding that it was going to overthrow them. Today, I think, is a mark that is actually uplifting and honouring all the kōrero that has been said today. Indeed, Minister Little, e te whanaunga nei rā Ngāti Mahu te mihi nei ki aku anu hoki, tipa o tira tātou katoa. And I can't help but say that in relationship to Chad, for carrying ahakoa takaroa te wā e pai ana, me whai wā tēnei kaupapa nui whakaharahara. Anō re ki a koe Chad e kawe nei tēnei kōrero, tahi o tātou e mihi ana. He whānautanga mai tēnei. I recall the birth of my first child, crying like a baby. E tangi tātou mā. E tangi. He mahi nui, he kaupapa nui tēnei. And it's fitting that we launched the names of these two groups today, because when we name our children, we like to think that we're going to have this name for this child and that child, but it's not actually until the day we actually get a true realization of the name. Nō reira, ngā mihi nui ki ngā mātanga reo, e tākoha te koutou e nei ingoa, ara ko te whatu ora, ara ko te aka whai ora e mihi ana. Almost there, whānau. E kia nei te kōrero ki te pai a muri, ka pai a mua. If everything in the back is okay, then everything in the front is going to be okay. So it's a little kōrero from the exchanges on the marae. Everything in the back, the kitchen, everything in the front, the karanga, the whai kōrero, the pōwhiri, and so on. So I'd like to flip the coin a bit and give a new framing of ko tātou ki muri. Ko tātou ki muri. We are enabling the change that we want to see. Therefore, the front are therefore our whānau who are at the coalface of the engagement of our Māori Pacifica disability communities. So I'd like to acknowledge also our whānau here, but also the many, as Rob has also alluded to, the tens and thousands of people who are actually going to be servicing and supporting all of this mahi out in our communities. Nō reira mihi ana ki tēnā ki tēnō koutou. And lastly, whānau, I want to just bring us back to our place, our Waikato Tainui. In particular, our South Campus here at AUT. We often like to use the term, so AUT, if you don't know, is Auckland University of Technology, but we often use the term Auckland University of Transformation. For our students, for our research that meets the needs of our communities of which we engage. And so I can't help but think that this is also a huge transformation for ourselves as a iwi whānui or New Tireni. So I unashamedly would like to express that the whakapapa of this kaupapa here is also the Auckland University of Te Whatu Ora, the Auckland University of Te Aka Whai Ora, and that you are now woven into the fabric, a layer into our university, and also ourselves into this kaupapa here. Nō reira, on behalf of our university, on behalf of our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Damon Salesa, and all of his whānau, tēnā koe te tuahine Jenny e mihi ana. O tira kia koutou katoa, tēnā koutou kia karakia tātou. Etu. Ka tākina te kaua, ko te kaua nui, ko te kaua roa, ko te kaua whakatike, ko te kaua iahu mai no tiki o te rangi. E te ko te pū, ko te weo, ko te rito, ko te take, ko te pūkanga, ko te wānanga, ko te taura, ko te tauira. Tēnei rā te āwhenuku te āwherangi no te ori mutu pui e te take ue nuku ue rangi. Tēnei ko hoho ki runga ki te tipua, ki runga ki te tawhito, ki runga ki te kāhui o ngātua. Kia pute e nei whare e rua ara, te whatu ora, te aka whai ora, i te whai au ki te amarama uhi, we roto mai te Māori, hau mie hui e, tāe ki e. Tēnā rā tātou katoa.
E koeira ka mutu, hei konei muti o ai, ngā neke hanga o te rā, kua whakarewa hia ake e nei wāhanga hou o te tari o ngā hauora o Aotearoa whānui. That brings us to the end. Ko Dr. Valence, ko Dr. Valence Smith, Vice-Chancellor Māori here at AUT, closing the karakia and bringing us to the end of our proceedings. Ka tira e te iwi e mātakitaki mai nei i te whānuitanga o te motu. Tēnei e mihi nei kia tātou, kia ora tātou katoa. Thank you very much for watching the live stream today. We started early this morning i timata ke tātou i te tai tokerau, i Waitangi, i hiki nā tu te tapu o ngā ingoa o ngā wāhanga hou o te pūnaha haura o Aotearoa. Kātahi ka hūnuku mai ki konei ki tāmaki makaurau, whakarewa ake ai i enei wāhanga o te pūnaha haura hou. We started in Waitangi this morning, we're here in Manukau. It has been quite the long day, but a significant day, as you've heard, July 1st, 2022, and the beginning of the new health system for Aotearoa. It's been a pleasure bringing you the live stream today, and thank you for joining us from wherever you have been watching today, and we wish you all very well. We're going to close with the highlights reel from Waitangi this morning. Kia koutou nei kore tae te tae a tinana ki Waitangi I tēnei ata nei na kia mātakitaki anō ki ngā neke hanga I te tae tokerau I tēnei ata. Hoi anō, that brings us to the end of the program. We'll leave you with some highlight reels from Waitangi, e te ti, e te tā, kia ora tātou katoa, and have a very good day ahead. Indeed.
Kia tākina ke rā te tautara ki motu kōkako. Tahahia rā te tiki o tū te mahurangi.
So today, as is tradition in Māori, we give prayer to the opening of a new kaupapa, which we're here today, so that the rising sun gets to bless our kaupapa, which is why we come together in the morning. And now to have a kaupapa like this, te aka whai ora and te whatu ora, two kaupapa that will change this country moving forward, which is why, for at least my part, I think it's important we start this way.
No place more fitting to start this historical day than here at Te Taitokerau, on the grounds of Waitangi, amongst people who were there when this journey first began. It is but for the grace of those that have come before me, I am here today, and we are all here today to celebrate the establishment of our independent Māori Health Authority, Te Aka Whai Ora.
You know, I couldn't help but shed a few tears in there as our kaumātua ushered in the names, and the significance is huge.
Te ingoa o te whare hauora tāngui. Te whare o te whare hauora Māori. Te aka whai ora.
Whilst we're here now, te aka whai ora and te whatu ora, I'm mindful that if we get to see further, it's because we stood on the shoulders of giants. So it's thinking about all of those who have battled throughout the years to get us here, and what better place to usher in the new era.
Make sure we address those inequities, that unfairness that has bedeviled our health system for so long. This kaupapa goes back many decades. So we've got to this point. We've got two organisations in place now. We have a dedicated independent Māori Health Authority. The challenge now is to make it all work, and so there's still plenty more to do to really fix those health inequities for Māori. Then we'll be a way better country for it. We lay some foundations today. We set a bit of a chart for the path forward, but now we've got to do the mahi. It's okay for you, it's okay for us, so away you go.
Start, do you have specific targets by which you can measure accountability?
Yeah, we've got some measures about the health system as a whole. They're the ones that we talked about last year. They appear in the interim government policy statement that has also been released today. They are high-level measures, but it'll be for the new organisations and the executive leadership teams to work with more specific targets to manage performance of those organisations. So, that sort of work will continue.
You're talking a lot about bringing in new staff, but does today also mean any job losses?
Well, I expect over time there will be, particularly for some of the back office functions, when you have 20 different organisations doing more or less the same thing, and you have a whole bunch of functions that go with that. A lot of those functions, there can be some consolidation and get some efficiencies out of that. But whatever numbers we lose for those sorts of functions, those resources will go into the front line of healthcare.
Any idea on the numbers?
Don't know the numbers. It's too early to tell at the moment. We've had a sort of a big shift over of everybody and one kind of lump sum, if you like, and now it's the job of the new organisations and their leadership to work through how they get the efficiencies, how they get their best systems running, and whatever resources are relieved from that goes back into healthcare frontline.
That's staffing issues and complaints about wait times. How will this new system improve conditions for people in care?
What it means is we've got one principal decision maker, that's Te Whānau, Health New Zealand, as opposed to 20 different decision makers. And Te Whānau and Te Aka Whaiora, the Māori Health Authority, can look at the system as a whole and make decisions about what we need to do, to clear waiting time backlogs, and work on those staffing issues, recruitment campaigns, developing the long-term pipeline of future health talent. Those things can be done in a much more cohesive, coordinated way than was able to be done before.
Do you expect the transition to this new system to have any ongoing disruption?
Well, it's unlikely when you see a transition of this size to a system this size that it's completely flawless. There will be stumbles, there will be niggles. That's just the nature of those things. But the long-term objective is very clear. We can get some greater coherence, some greater focus on performance of the system in a way that we just weren't able to achieve before.
And how confident are you that it will be equitable?
I'm very confident, and we now have with Te Aka Whaiora, the Māori Health Authority, an independent entity focused on equity for Māori, but the reality is what they do for Māori will be applicable for Pacific populations and other populations that have struggled to get good access and good support from health services. There is a very deep focus on equity in this transformation. You'll see that reflected in the interim government policy statement, where the first item of the five that are listed is equity.
And have there been any day one teething problems so far?
Well, Peeni Henare and I have been at the celebration this morning, travelled down here. No one's told us of anything that's gone wrong, and all the travel schedules have gone to time, and apart from Chad Paraoni making sure this function went way over time, so far things seem to be good. And I think that probably reflects what we've been saying all along, that in terms of what's happening at the front line for both patients and the workforce, they won't notice a lot of difference. The changes at the structure at the moment and some of at the leadership levels, now with full responsibility being reposed in those organisations and their leaders, then the transformational work about changing systems and processes to get better performance, that now begins. And then I think people will start to see a level of change.
And that's obviously going to be some strain on the people doing that. Is that going to have any impact on healthcare under in a system that's already under pressure?
I think we've been very clear is that we don't want the change process to be disruptive. The system is under pressure at the moment, in some places incredible pressure, so we certainly don't want to do that. We still have the challenge of ongoing COVID. We don't want to disrupt what's being done in that respect. So we've laid out our expectations clearly as the change process will be done in a measured way and in a way that causes least disruption.
Minister, solving things like recruitment and equity, these are big issues. They're huge issues, yet you make it sound like, well, we'll have a recruitment program and we're going to, see change. How serious is what you're looking to do here in terms of scale and scope? and achieving results for people?
I think what we've had up to now is with 20 different organisations plus the ministry all trying to work on those things, and particularly the DHBs working on those issues for their particular needs. You've got 20 different organisations doing 20 kind of different things, or even the same thing in some cases, on recruitment, both the short term and the long term. A lot of that has been sort of stumbling over each other and falling over each other. More recently, in fact, since the beginning of this year with some of the nursing recruitment campaigns, actually there's been a greater level of coordination, really in anticipation of this change. And we've seen a difference. We get some cohesion to that. With now a single organisation who is the employer of the hospital workforce, we can really actually get some oomph behind a single recruitment campaign, properly coordinated, and recruiting into where the shortage is greatest, and then distributing incoming people to where they need to go in the system to meet the gaps that are there.
But how do you deal with the problems of people not wanting to necessarily go where there's need? I mean, that's an established problem, right? How do you change that? How does Health NZ change that?
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the short term, we're going to be recruit Kiwis who are overseas, some Kiwis who are here in New Zealand but haven't, say, for example, in nursing, haven't nursed for a while but are keen to come back. Plus also, those who have qualified overseas. We can attach, a requirement to work in particular areas in some of those sort of processes of recruitment. So look, I expect that Health New Zealand will just, do what they have to do. But they can be recruiting into the system as a whole, working out where people need to go and working through the recruitment process to get people where we need them.
And what do you say to frontline health workers who say there's a lack of clarity here on the path ahead? They just don't know what's happening next.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of the communication stuff that has gone out, and certainly the opportunities that have been available to the frontline health workforce to find out what's going on. As I get around the hospitals, I see some of the information that's on some notice boards. So I'm confident that there has been a reasonably good effort to get the information out there. But as I say, as I've gone around and asked the questions of a lot of those frontline health workers, and they said, how's it? What's it going to be like on day one? And I said, actually, you won't notice much or if anything at all, because you finished your shift on Thursday, you turn up on Friday. Not a lot is going to change. You'll still have the same manager that you're responsible for. It's still the same hospital. Still the same patients that you're there. It'll be over time when the new entities think about systems and processes and their structures to get the best out of the system. Then you'll start to notice some change. So it's not surprising that there will be people saying, "Gee, well, what is changing?" Don't worry, change is coming, but it's in a way that is aimed at getting better support, greater support for the frontline health workforce than I think that they've seen perhaps more recently.
A large part of this is eliminating the postcode lottery, right? Mm-hmm. When you've got a really slow burn of targets coming into place and accountability, when are we actually going to have a handle on whether that is working and what that looks like?
I think one of the projects we've already set up is dealing with the long backlog of planned care. So we've got a task force set up of clinicians, senior clinicians. They're doing that work at the moment. We're going to see more of that. I think one of the things we can expect to see with these structures is clinical leadership really elevated to a really important level across the country, because we need to see improved clinical performance to get that consistency across the country. One of the things I really expect to see is that we will see emerging some clinical leaders. We've got some great clinical leaders already in the system. They've got leaders in their particular DHB, or have been in their DHB. They've got something to offer the rest of the country, but they haven't been able to do that. Now they will. That's the stuff that's going to lift performance right across the country and get some consistency, and actually get different clinicians and different hospitals with a better forum now to exchange their ideas, support each other and lift that performance.
Let's get a follow-on question to that. I mean, so it's going to mean patients potentially travelling around the country, being treated in different areas. Yep. How is that going to work for the patient, and who pays for the travel? Yeah, well, actually meeting the cost of that travel for patients who already have to go to a different hospital already has been one of the problem areas. It's the travel provision has been applied differently by different DHBs. We've got to stop that. If we say that the best place for you to get treatment and the quickest way is to go to that hospital up there, we'll support you and a family member, talk to you about what is needed for support, but get you there so you can get your treatment as quickly as possible. So that will be worked up. We've got to do better than what we've been doing up to now. one to follow on.
Two more final quick questions, please.
Apologies. So we've got 9 localities at the moment, and you've indicated we should have 60 to 80 by this time next year.
No, in 2 years.
In 2 years, okay. In that case, how are you confident that you will be getting the feedback from communities about their health needs, their specific health needs, in the shorter term? 2 years is still a long way away.
Yeah, it is. I'm actually meeting with one of the organisations doing the locality planning here for Aotearoa and Papatoetoe. I got some feedback actually from some participants at a meeting the other day on the west coast of their process. So that feedback is coming already, A, about the process, and B, what people think is needed. But officially, the locality processes started today. They also officially started 1 July. So I expect over the next few weeks, as the processes to put those together actually start to happen, we'll start to learn more about A, how the processes are working, and B, what's coming out of them in terms of feedback from communities. The reason we set up 9 initially, and we're calling them prototypes, is there is going to be a bit of kind of feeling our way and a bit of trial and error, see what works and see what doesn't work. But that process is underway, and we'll refine that over the months to come and slowly build up the number of localities that we have in place.
Why haven't you appointed 4 members of the interim boards to the permanent boards?
Once the legislation was passed and we're in the position of appointing the permanent boards, the interim Māori Advisory Committee and the transition unit did an assessment of the skills mix of each of the boards. It became apparent that there were some gaps on each of the boards, which each of those bodies recommended to us as ministers that we really needed to fill. And it got to the point where we thought, well, if we're going to fill those particular gaps, one of them, for example, on Te Whatu Ora, Health in New Zealand, is and we need somebody with a strong infrastructure background, because we've got a nearly $7 billion building program underway, and it needs good leadership even at the governance level. And they also said that we really need a strong voice on primary care, because we need to see a lot of change in primary care. Once we sort of accepted that advice, it meant that we couldn't necessarily continue with everybody who was on the ministerial Section 11 committees. So not everybody who was on those committees was appointed, and we're now in the process of filling the 2 gaps on each of the boards at the moment to meet what the reviewers recommended were gaps that we needed to fill.
Do you mind if I just ask one question on Hillmorton Hospital? How concerned are you on the staffing issues there?
Well, I got advice in my weekly report earlier this year about the issues. What I've always made clear, particularly in relation to forensic mental health services, is that the services are expected to work at a capacity that is safe for them to work. That is why Hillmorton, even though it's got 15 beds, has only been working with 12, because they had determined sometime last year that it wasn't safe for them to work to the full 15. But in terms of the events in Christchurch, there is an investigation underway. The Director of Mental Health and Addictions, which is a statutory role, Dr. John Courtauld, he notified me last night that he's going to exercise his powers under the Mental Health Act to now consider establishing a formal investigation by his office into the circumstances of the events of last weekend.
Thank you, folks. If you can just wait here for a bit, because I'm going to then take you through to the start of the board meetings, but we've just got to get set up.